The setting for this case is way out on the eastern plains of Colorado. The case is an insurance injury claim investigation. The subject, a married female residing on a farm with her husband and children about 5 miles from the nearest town and about 30 miles from the nearest city. The residence was a newer house built up on a hill with a dirt driveway about a half-mile long off of a county road. There are multiple outbuildings on the property, horses, some cattle, and they had some hay fields out there too. There was no shoulder on the road to be able to sit and park and watch. Now, I was very green, and I mean very green as a PI. I had only done a couple of cases. This was my second or my third case, I think. When I asked my client what they thought I should do, they said, well, just sit out there on the road and wait for her to leave. So that's what I did. There I sat on the side of the road, no shoulder, waiting for her to leave. After about an hour, here comes a pickup down the driveway. I pulled out my binoculars and it appeared to be a female subject as the driver. She drove right past me. I was able to get some video as she drove towards me, and I made a positive ID of her. I flipped a U-turn after she got a little ways away, and I followed her into that small little country town with a population of about 80 people. There's not much in this town. A car repair shop, an old diner, coffee and donut shop, and a small grocery store. She parked across the street from the diner, and I was able to obtain video as she walked across the street, up the stairs, and into the diner. This was good video, as she supposedly had a leg injury and wasn't supposed to be able to walk without a crutch or a cane. No crutch, no cane, no displayed injury at all. The money shot was made. Now, after about 30 minutes, she left the diner, walked across the street, went to the grocery store for a few minutes, then left and returned home. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. I got more video and couldn't have been happier with my success so far. I had 4 days to do on this case. Day 1 was finished up. I never saw her again that day. Day 2 rolls around. I set up the same. No problem, right? It worked before. Let's sit on the side of the county road, no shoulder, staring up the hill, watching the subject residence. About the same time as she left on the previous day, she left again. She went to that same small town, went to the diner, went back to her car, and then returned home. Good job. More video, right? Mid-afternoon, I saw some stirring up by the house. It was so far away, I couldn't really tell who it was, but someone was walking around the residence. Then suddenly, I see the pickup truck that she was driving earlier coming down the drive. This time, though, it stopped at one of the outbuildings along the driveway. I could see that there was a cattle pen there. I could see somebody look like they were maybe feeding the cattle. I couldn't really see a lot, but I did see the glisten of a light right next to somebody standing by the pickup. I grabbed my binoculars. I pulled them up. As I did, I thought I saw a man with what may have been a rifle or a scope pointing in my direction. Then he slowly walked behind the outbuilding. No way, I said to myself. The heat must be getting to me. It was about an hour away from quitting time, so I decided to just play it safe. I went into that small town for that last hour and waited to see if she left. Now, day 3 rolls around. What do? Yep, you got it. I am a pro now. I sit on that county road and I just watch the resident. About the same time my subject had left before, I see the same pickup coming down the driveway. No way, I say to myself. This is too easy. As the pickup gets closer and closer, I notice it's a man driving, not my subject. Okay, I say to myself, no worries. He is going to go for the donuts today. He stopped at the outbuilding again, but for just a few minutes, never leaving the pickup this time. Then he starts slowly driving down the driveway. As he gets on the road, he's coming right towards me. As he continues driving about 5 miles per hour, my heart starts racing. Oh my goodness, this guy had a gun pointed at me yesterday. What do? Do I take off? Do I flip a U? Do I get out of Dodge? What do I do? I just sat there working up a cover story in my mind just in case. Sure enough, as the pickup approached the side of my car, he stopped and looked right at me. I rolled down my window and I said, "Howdy, how you doing today?" He just stares at me and he says,
"Are you watching my wife.
Now my heart is at the bottom of my feet. I am sure my heart rate is about 150 at this time. I'm sweating up a storm. I look at him and I say, "Excuse me? Why would I be watching your wife?" He then says,
"Well, she's on workers' comp, and I figured you were a PI out here watching her."
Quickly I tell him, "Well, you're right, sir. I am an investigator. I am working an insurance investigation. There is a guy who lives up the road a ways. It seems he took out an insurance policy on his business about 3 months ago for about $6 million. He upped that policy to $10 million, and the insurance company just really wants to keep an eye on him and see what kind of a lifestyle he lives." The farmer then says,
Okay. Well, I just thought you might be watching my wife.
He turns his pickup around and he goes back to the farm. I had no idea what to do. He stopped and he fed the cattle and the horses along the way. I could tell he was watching me. After a couple of hours went by, a little red sports car that I had never seen on a previous day went past me about 70 miles an hour. I threw my car into gear after it went up over the hill, and I made like I was following him. I figured that just might convince the farmer that I was waiting for that car. I then went driving around the countryside on all of the county roads, and I got lucky. I found a location by some old trees by a creek bed where I could see the house on top of the hill about 1.5 miles away. I set my camera up on a tripod on that road. I zoomed in all the way with my screen flipped open, and I just sat there and I watched for movement. Whenever I thought I might have saw a vehicle move up there, I grabbed a few seconds of video, and then I hightailed it over towards the highway just in case she was driving, and went into the city. I figured I was probably burned in that little town, so I never wanted to go back there and set up any surveillance. Late on that last day, she did go into the city. I did follow her at a distance, and I was able to get a little bit of video of her as she continued to do some shopping in the city. About a month later, the client was so pleased they had sent me the case back. Lessons learned on this one for me: never, ever, ever, never park on the side of a county road during surveillance, especially if you're going to be following the subject. Now, if you have somebody else that's going to follow the subject and you have a good guise that you can set up, then that might work. Lesson 2, always have a good pretext story of why you are there. Mine seemed lame, but it may have just worked. It just was hard for me to come up with one on the fly, so be prepared. Another lesson for these tough situations: always look for a location to watch the residents from a distance. It's always a lot easier to deal with another person that's not your subject or your subject's husband if they come around and asking you what you're doing there. If you can watch at a distance, then you might be able to catch them on a highway or a major road and conduct the follow in a safe and covert manner.